Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm looking at the Blitz 2 controller from Mojang, formerly known as Big One. Now, there is a lot going on with this controller. I can't cover everything just because of how much it does have going on. I will do my best though, and here I'm going to be covering the specs and the software first, along with the physical features and the layout of the controller, before getting into what I like, potentially don't like, and the gray area, and then I'll wrap the video up. With that being said, let's get into the specs. The Blitz 2 is a wireless controller that can be connected via Bluetooth, wired with a USB Type-C cable, or with the 2.4 GHz dongle. For the 2.4 GHz connection, this has a 2000 Hz polling rate, and when using this in a wired connection, this has a 1000 Hz polling rate. Mojang claims that this has a 0.005 milliseconds response time at the 2000 Hz polling rate, but unfortunately I don't have the means to test that, so I can't actually check whether or not that's true. This will work on PC, a Nintendo Switch, or via Bluetooth if you have any device that will connect with, but not an Xbox or a PlayStation, so do keep that in mind. This has a 1000 milliamp battery that gives this roughly 12 to 15 hours of playtime, which that's from what I've read online with these specs and with other users, and it's actually what I've experienced with this controller as well. The data transmission chip inside of this has a 12-bit sampling ADC that can make 4096 levels of sampling, meaning that this is more responsive when using the joysticks, which this has ALPS joysticks that have a 2 million cycle operating life. This features 16 mechanical switches for the various buttons, which all feel very responsive, but keep in mind they are louder than regular membrane switches that you find on an Xbox controller, which let's go ahead and do a sound test on those really quick. Inside of the box, you will get the controller, USB dongle, swappable thumbsticks and D-pad, USB Type-C cable for charging the controller, and the user manual. And this does come with a 12-month warranty according to that user manual. Shifting over now to the controller layout, starting on the front here, you have the dual layer micro switch ABXY buttons. The mechanical D-pad here is swappable, so you have the 4 or 8 style face for this if you wanted to change up the layout. The thumbsticks are swappable as well. You basically have like a small, medium, and large for the height. They do have a nice rubber grip to them as well. Towards the bottom of the front of the controller here, you're going to find 4 buttons. Starting on the left-hand side, you have the turbo button, then the remap button, you have a macro button, and configuration button. Now, I'm not going to cover how to use these in full detail, but inside of the user manual, it outlines how you will actually do this, and you can do most of the adjustments to the controller through this. You don't necessarily need the software to make adjustments to the controller, which is something that I do like to see. Just above this, you're going to have the function button, which will illuminate, and then above that you have 4 indicator lights. This lets you know when the battery is low or if you're actually changing to a different profile. Towards the top, you're going to have the home, view, menu, and screenshot buttons. And for the home button, it will illuminate. You do have an RGB light there. And then you have 2 RGB lights kind of towards the middle of the front as well. On the top of the controller, you're going to have your left and right shoulder and trigger buttons, as well as the M3 and M4. So usually these may be on the back as a paddle. Here they're on the top. All of these are mechanical switches as well. You also have the Bluetooth connect button. You press this to turn this into the Bluetooth mode, and then you have your USB Type-C port for charging, which, moving the M3 and M4 buttons to the top, by the way, allows you to use a 6-finger grip style if you wanted to. On the back of the controller, you're going to find the other 2 M buttons. all of these are mappable if you wanted to. Now you can do that in the software, which I'll cover here in a minute. And on the back, you also have the magnetic charging pins if you were to use this with their charging dock station, which Mojon has told me will be coming out soon. It's not currently out. The original Blitz has one, so hopefully here pretty soon we will see this available so you can get that. That way you're not using the USB-C charging if you don't want to. You could just literally set it on the dock, just like an Xbox controller, and it would charge it that way. Last here on the outside portions of the handles, you're going to have a textured grip on them. And then for color options, you have the blue, white, and orange version that I have here. There's also a gray, white, and orange version. The original had all black, which I do like. I haven't been able to find that for this one though. So I think you are really locked into just those two color options. So now that I've covered the specs and physical features, let's take a look at the software. So with the software here, one thing I do want to mention is that you cannot scale or blow this up to a full window yet. Mojon has told me that that is something that they are working on, so hopefully down the road we will have that ability. So I'm just doing a screen recording and then essentially cropping everything in. So if it looks a little bit grainy for this, that's the reason why. It's because I've had to scale and crop just to zoom in on the software. So here we're going to have on the outside 4 different tabs: common setting, macro setting, debug, and then firmware upgrade. So here's where I actually did the firmware upgrade when I first connected this to the PC. I would recommend doing that when you first get this, but that's all that's going to have, so I'm not going to look at that tab. When we're looking at the common settings here, we can do our configuration, and so we can add our own motion, sticks, key maps, shake. So here, joystick simulation, left or right, you can click on that and then you can make the adjustments to this if you need to. For the thumbsticks, left and right, we have the various curves that we could adjust: default, curve 1, curve 2, and then you can change this to what you want. And then here we have dead zone adjustments if we need that. If you're looking at just the curve of those thumbsticks and you wanted to scale this, you can do that. Stabilization factor, adjusting that. You can see in real time how this is working. Joystick directional triggering, make the adjustments there. Rectangular, this may be a scaling issue with the software because I can't see the bottom here, and it won't actually pull up this outside of saying that it's a rectangular boundary algorithm, but you can turn this on. Axis reversal, X and Y. And for this rectangular one, what I've seen is as you do that, it does simulate this rectangular shape. So if you're going outside of that, it's kind of creating this boundary for it. Lots of adjustments here. Not stuff I typically mess with necessarily, even on a controller, but for anybody that does want to do that, I do like the fact that this is here. Key maps. So if we're needing to map out anything, change anything, you can do that here. The big one is going to be the M1 through 4 buttons, and then you can turn the turbo on for that as well. But again, keep in mind, you don't necessarily need to use the software to do this. You can do that just through the controller itself, as long as you look at the user manual. And then shake. We're going to the left and right here. If we wanted to scale how much you need to actually shake in order to create whatever input, you can do that here as well. Then looking at our macros. Tap, long press, tap to cycle, long press to cycle. And whatever you want to create here, key, duration, interval, or we can just clear that itself. But M1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we wanted to confirm we're good with that, change these things up, you can come in here and actually do that as well. But it depends on what you're going to try and set this to. So just doing a recording there, and then you can save it. There we go. So we have that saved. Again, I can clear it if I want to. And then go through and choose another one if you wanted to. And do whatever input that you want there. So this is normally what that screen looks like. Here I'm just clicking on it. Oh, let's just give that a name. That one. There you go. Enable it, disable it. edit, share, delete. We'll delete that, we don't need it. But again, I can come in here and create a new one if I wanted to. Debug. So connection mode selection right here. Step precision settings, accuracy, right? You can change that there. And so that's going to affect the accuracy of the joystick. Rate of return setting. So if you didn't want this at the 2000 Hertz for the polling rate, you could change this. And that may be if it's causing issues with your PC, for example. Calibration, start calibration, left stick maps D-pad if you wanted to do that. And then you have your user manual and then reset. There's a lot of stuff in here. Again, I'm not covering this with incredible depth just because we could spend 30 minutes on just this and the various things that you could do, but hopefully this just gives you an overview of the options that you will find in the software. So now that I've covered the specs, physical features, and software, let's get into what I like about this controller. The big three things that I'm looking for in a controller. I want good performance, I want good features, and then I want this to feel good in my hand. I want comfort. Here, performance overall has been really good. Initially, I had some issues with this losing connection to my PC, but after I updated the firmware and restarted my PC, I haven't had any of those issues. I'm going to come back to this here in a little bit, but performance overall since then has been really seamless. It's been really good on PC. I like the fact that I can connect this to any device that I can use with a Bluetooth outside of another console like an Xbox or a PlayStation, but you can connect this to iOS or Android. So I've used this with my phone without any issues. You can also use this with the Nintendo Switch, and that has worked well. And with the Nintendo Switch, that's the only instance that I've used the gyroscope. It does work good in that instance. Not a feature I typically use, but I like the fact that it is here. For some people, that may be a big selling point, especially if you're pairing this with your phone, and it may be something that you're going to use more with whatever game you're running on your phone. And connection to these devices has also been seamless. There's a little bit of a learning curve initially. So when you're changing this between like your phone, an iOS-based device, or your PC over to the Nintendo Switch, you're changing the input style. So if we're looking at the X input versus Switch here, you're going to, for the Nintendo Switch, hold down the home button and the A button, and then this will turn it over into that controller style in terms of the inputs that you would use there. And then if you hold down the home button and the B button, it'll switch it back more to an Xbox controller style layout. This is going to matter when it comes to whatever device that you're using this on. So once you've done that, you hold down that button on the top that puts this into a pairing mode. It will pop up on the Nintendo Switch or your phone, whether that's iOS or Android, and then you connect to this, and then it's just good to go after that. If you wanted to use this on PC via Bluetooth, you could do that as well, although the USB dongle here is going to be the easier way to get this to connect, and you do get that 2000 Hertz polling rate with that. So across the board for me, this has had great performance with a great connection. Next, we have the features that this has. And there's a lot here. Again, I can't even cover all of these things, but you have so many different adjustments that you can make in the software. If you weren't going to use this on a PC with the software, you could also just do it on the controller itself. Again, that is laid out for you inside of the user manual. But the one thing here I would say is expect to sink some time into understanding how to do this. So it's going to kind of be trial and error initially as you're just trying to work through how you do this correctly, especially with something like the macros, for instance. And then for those that are going to use this on PC, you get even more options. And I think for some people that may feel daunting, and it may be an instance of like, I just imagine these comments where people are like, why would I use any of this? I don't need all of this. Every controller isn't specifically for one person. What I like is when there's enough options. They kind of create a nice umbrella or buffet for people to kind of come and choose the things that they want to utilize with that product as they see fit for their personal needs, not just one specific need. So here, if you don't want to use any of this stuff, you don't have to. Out of the box, the controller is good to go. If you wanted to create macros, if you wanted to use the turbo mode, if you wanted to just change up the configuration, map out those extra paddles, the M buttons, right? The two on the back, the two on the top. You have all the tools necessary to do that if you wanted to, and that is something that I really do appreciate about this product. And then last here, we're gonna have the comfort. I like the grip on the side here. Initially, I was like, I don't know that I'm gonna really like this. But after like the first hour, I just was immediately after that, like, no, I really like this because it provides a little bit more grip than, for instance, a regular Xbox controller that doesn't have that. It feels more stable in my hands, where nothing against a regular Xbox controller, but when it doesn't have that grip, and it's kind of a little bit more of the older model, I think some of the newer ones have that grip on there now, it would feel like as your hands got just a little bit sweaty, like it just wanted to slide out of your hands. You're not going to have to worry about that here. It feels stable and firm in your hands the whole time that you're utilizing this. So I really like the grip, the shape, the feel, the weight to this as well, which I like a slightly heavier controller. I also like a heavier mouse. I just don't like really light products. That's just not something that I like to use for whatever reason. It just doesn't feel quite as quality, even though it may still be a quality product. I just don't like it when it's light. Here, this is slightly heavier than a regular Xbox controller. It feels very good in the hands when it comes to the weight. It's not as heavy as like an Elite 2 controller, which may be way too heavy for a lot of people. I think it finds a good, nice middle ground where most people are going to just really like the weight that this has when it's in their hands. So across the board, I think this has great performance, solid features, and we have a really good comfort level with this. Shifting over to the negatives, I'm happy to report that I don't have any standout negatives just because I didn't have any issues with performance or utilizing the features or the comfort with this. Getting into the gray area, these are things that you may or may not care about. I only have a couple here, but the big one was when I initially started having the issues on PC with the connection, updated the firmware, didn't have those. I didn't initially just use this with my phone or a Nintendo Switch. My thought was, if I was having an issue with those, how would I update the firmware? You would need a PC. So then my brain goes down that rabbit hole and it's like, well, that's kind of a bummer. But then I was like, who doesn't have access to a PC at this point? Most people do. I think there are going to be those exceptions where really the person does not have access to a PC. And for those people, this may be something to be mindful of. Again, I didn't directly go to a Nintendo Switch or my phone to use this, so I don't know if it would even have an issue. But on PC, it initially did, where it was just dropping connection. Did the update, haven't had an issue since. But I do think, again, for the vast majority of people, they will have access to a PC in their home where they can download the app really quick, they can update the firmware, and then they don't need to use it again unless they wanted to do something that was a little bit more in depth when it comes to customizing the controller. Because again, most of the settings that are going to be the big things people are most likely going to want to adjust, like turning turbo mode on or creating a macro, you can just do that directly on the controller itself and you don't need the software. So here I guess I would say that if you are going to use this on an Android device, your iOS device, you're going to use this with a Switch exclusively, no access to a PC, then maybe be mindful of this. For everybody else, I don't think this is going to be an issue. Again, you can update the firmware using the application here, and you're not going to have any issues. If you even have those is the other thing, because I don't know if it was just something to do with my PC, because I've had that happen in the past as well. The next thing, and this is going to be the last thing here, I like the colors. I like the white. It just has an overall nice aesthetic. I like the fact that you have the white and the gray. I would have liked to have seen a black version, just like the original Blitz. So maybe down the road we do get more color options here, because some people just may want more options when it comes to those various colors. Again, we're not seeing the same colors that we had available to us with the original Blitz. I think I would take an all black version of this. I think that would just look really, really sharp, because I like overall just like the look that they have going on here. But this may be something where it doesn't really quite fit the build aesthetics that somebody has going on. So if you are running a PC that has a bunch of black with it, and all of a sudden you have this white controller that has gray and orange, again, it just may not fit. So hopefully down the road, we maybe see that other option available to us. And last, there's a couple items that I just wanted to touch base on really quick. Some of these I mentioned earlier, but just to go over them again. This has mechanical switches. I love the feel of them, but it makes a noise. If you're somebody that you're gaming late at night and you need to be quiet, this thing is not going to be quiet. So keep that in mind. It's going to be making that click noise every time you push a button. So again, if you just need something that's quiet, not a controller I would necessarily recommend here. And then this doesn't come with a carrying case. This doesn't come with, like I've seen some in the past, it has like a pouch where you can put some of the stuff in. It doesn't have any of that. So if you're going to be hauling this around, you're going to need to find a carrying case for it. And if you do use the different height thumbsticks and you swap those out a lot, it doesn't have a case for those either. So again, that'd be something that you'd want to make sure it has room inside of a controller carrying case that you could put those as well. And this last one, just because I know I'm going to get questions on it or people are going to comment something about this not working with an Xbox or a PlayStation, they have different controllers that are more geared towards those consoles. You would want to look at those. I know this has to do a lot with the money it costs to make a basically proprietary based controller geared towards a specific console. So when you deal with something like this, they want to just have it where it's PC, Bluetooth, and then the Nintendo Switch, and then you have to choose, am I going to go with the PlayStation or am I going to go with the Xbox, and then potentially tack that on, but that just is going to increase the overall cost because you're going to need to, again, get their specific codecs or whatever else in terms of the internals. You're going to have to pay them for it. Like there's all this other stuff that's going to happen with that in terms of meeting the standards that they have for that ecosystem. So here, and I see this with all these different controllers, you don't have one that just is, it's going to do everything. It's, hey, I mainly play on PC. I mainly do the Xbox. I mainly do the PlayStation. You will find an associated controller for that console, but you're not going to find one that is all encompassing. You also have to look at the fact that when you look at like a PlayStation 5 controller, internally that's just so different, because when we're looking at that, if you want the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, all that other stuff, that's a lot of stuff to put in there that just isn't going to be free. It's going to jack up the cost of that controller, but that's only going to work with that. It's not going to then work on an Xbox or a Nintendo Switch. So here, I don't think it's a downside that it works with PC, Bluetooth, and a Nintendo Switch. If I wanted one for an Xbox or a PlayStation, they do have those other options that you can look at and consider. So in conclusion, I think Mojang has done a really good job with the Blitz 2 wireless controller here. I think they have a lot of features, great performance, really good comfort going on with this thing. I haven't talked about price. I think that they've earned the price tag that they have with this. I expect that they're probably going to have some discount codes here and there. And currently, as of the writing and editing of this video, there is a 20% off coupon. I don't know how often we will be seeing those, but if it's still available when you go to pick this up, you can get this for an even lower price tag, which is nice. Ultimately, though, I don't like telling people what to do with their money. It is your money. I think this is worth the price tag that they're asking for this. If you don't, then you don't have to get it though. If you are interested, I will have a link for this in the description. And if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section and I will make sure to answer that for you there. So that is going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.